Chapter 39. Company. Vanguard has reached Foundation Level 68. Vanguard has reached Foundation Level 78. Kai turned his head around, making sure he wouldn't get ambushed again. As long as he didn't die, this entire disaster of a trip would turn out to be very beneficial for him. He had gained 32 levels just in one day. Even in his first life, he hadn't gained this much in 1 month. It made sense since he was fighting for his life alone and against many enemies. The Foundation realm was also the fastest level through which to advance. Nowadays, people who went from unlocking their magic to entering the forging realm in less than a year were considered passable. But just because someone entered a realm faster than others didn't mean that they were better or stronger. Everything was dependent on circumstances and opportunities. And this was his. With 55 attributes available, the question was once again where to place them. During his last fight, his gravity had burdened his own body more than the enemy. While he could still move and run, it wasn't easy for him even under his own domain. The goblin had also outclassed him in strength. Thinking it over, the choice was obvious. Vitality and strength would be the most beneficial for him under the increased gravity. But he also needed more variance. He was lacking speed too in terms of movement and reflexes. He was also low on mana at the moment. Adding more wisdom and giving himself more mana available was better than not having it. Placing his attributes, he felt pleased with his choices. Vitality, 100, 105. Strength, 110. Dexterity, 45. Endurance, 40. Intelligence, 80. Wisdom, 75. Health, 711 Rs 1050. Stamina, 222, 350. Mana, 201 Tausi, 750. He noticed his health was down nearly a third. He had certainly taken a beating during the fight with Sparkar, but his armor had protected him, although not completely. Being thrown around and taking the blunt attacks had caused superficial damage underneath the armor. It was also possible at least one rib was cracked or very bruised. His entire body felt tender and sore. The health potion had worn off mid-fight with the brute of a goblin. His head had healed, but the other newer injuries wouldn't heal until he managed to find himself another health potion or waited for them to heal naturally, which would take days, if not weeks. With the forest getting darker, he needed to find his way out and fast. He easily found the tracks back to where he had been. There was a long line through the grass and dirt from where he had been unwillingly dragged. Just as he was about to leave, he had an idea. Approaching the corpse of Sparkar, Kai grabbed at the ears and cut them off. He could only hope they were distinct enough for the guards to believe his tale of goblins hiding inside the forest. From the stories Kai had been told about goblins, he knew they could get out of hand very quickly if left unchecked. The question is how they got into this forest. After a few moments, he decided he didn't care as long as they didn't impede his way again. If the kingdom believed him, they would send in their own investigators to check his story. His only job right now was to survive. Following the trail back was easy enough. Apparently, the wingtip on his helmet had dragged into the ground deep enough to make a literal line through the dirt back. After a few minutes, he found the slime corpses. To his surprise, there were a few different creatures eating the remains of the slimes. It seems the cores, even broken, were a delicacy for monsters, animals, and humans alike. Horned rabbit, Foundation Level 39. Rabbit, Foundation Level 5. Rabbit, Foundation Level 4. It was odd. There were a few dozen rabbits, some with horns but most without, all gnawing down on the broke slime cores. They perked up for a moment as Kai approached, but quickly went back to eating away. It reminded him of when he had seen the shadow foxes eating the bee corpses. The circle of life, indeed. Kai decided he wouldn't try to fight them. Perhaps he would have if his mana was full, but it was barely back to a third of its maximum. Not like I'd managed to get a level from them anyways. Skirting the field of slime corpses and rabbits, he found himself back on track to leaving the forsaken forest. For 5 minutes he walked, hoping he was going in the right direction. He walked carefully even though it was nearly dark. It wouldn't do him any good to get ambushed if he tried to rush out of the forest carelessly. During his journey, he had to cross the shallow stream. His boots kept his feet dry, even though the water went up to his ankles. Groaning slightly, he climbed up a small embankment. When his head peeked over the embankment, he saw something he hadn't expected to see. A human-looking corpse was on the ground, dressed in a familiar grey and red robe. Is that? He felt a pang of sadness come over him. On top of the corpse, there were 5 hairy rodents, each ripping off parts of the body and chewing on them. Looking around, he didn't see any rat corpses or any other corpses at all, though he did notice there were some broken trees, burnt grass, and blackened tree trunks. Diseased fang rat, foundation level 57. Diseased fang rat, foundation level 58. Whatever had killed Hector must have left, leaving the scavengers to come to pick apart his body. There is no way Hector would lose to a bunch of rats 20 levels lower than him and not leave a single corpse. Running up near the body, Kai could see the ripped and tattered robe sleeve. Underneath was the recognizable sleeve of tattoos he had seen every day for the last 3 months. Off! He yelled at the rodents when they neither stopped nor moved at his presence. Instead of scurrying away, they turned and hissed at him, protecting their claim. Sword out, Kai decided to clear out the vermin before checking the corpse in detail to be absolutely sure it was who he thought it was. Taking a few steps forward, all the rats attacked simultaneously. They moved quickly, darting at him at speeds faster than his own. Too fast and numerous for his gravity pillar, Kai activated Domain, even though he knew it would drain his already low mana quickly. Immediately, the rats' speed halved, but still were quick enough to be a nuisance. The worst part was they had split up on each side of him, dividing his attention. This was the pain of gravity magic. Short of crushing his opponents to death or stopping them entirely, which his magic obviously wasn't strong enough to do, he had no ranged attacks to stop enemies before they reached him. Sometimes Kai wished he could just chuck a fireball or some blood magic at his opponents. He kept swiveling his head as the rats encircled him. Behind him, one of them jumped at him, but Kai was ready. He swung his sword single-handedly while twisting his body towards the rat, trying his best to keep his eye on the others. Instead of splitting the rat in half, he narrowly missed his target. The rat ended up on top of the flat of his blade as it continued running towards him down the length of his sword. Another rat jumped at him from his left. Acting on reflex, his arm swung back, bashing the rat against his bracer, tossing it back. He felt a sharp pinch on his right thigh. Disregarding the other 2 rats that were somewhere behind him, he thrust his left hand out with the help of heavy blow. He felt his ligaments and muscles scream as his arm shot down the top of his blade, snatching the rat just as it was jumping towards his face. Ignoring the pain and strain in his arm, he squeezed the rat's body hard. Its mouth opened, screeching in pain. Hanging on its snake-like fangs were bloody strips of flesh and robes from the corpse. Seeing it enraged Kai further, his fist tightening around the rat as hard as he could. Trapped in his hand, the rat's eyes bulged, but that didn't stop him. He had no mercy for the animal that would eat his friend. A moment further passed until he heard a pop and subsequent quiet, the rat no longer squeaking, coupled with the resounding ding inside his head. Dropping the corpse, he reached down towards his thigh and grabbed at the other one who was still gnawing away at him. He found purchase on the small body and squeezed with everything he had. He felt the rat let go of his thigh. Pulling the beast up, Kai could see the look of panic on its face, but that pity was disregarded when he saw blood and flesh in its mouth. His own blood and flesh. Disgusted, he threw the rat towards a tree with his heavy blow. Although he had thrown the rat with his offhand, it still made contact with the tree. A resounded crunch timed perfectly with the ding. You have slain diseased fang rat, foundation level 58. You have slain diseased fang rat, foundation level 57. Vanguard has reached foundation level 79. What happened to the other 3 rats? Turning around, Kai's heart nearly leapt out of his chest. A fox who looked just like Akane was sitting there, just watching him. In front of her were the other 3 rats, all dead. Kai sputtered, "How? What the... Akane?" Kai was rendered speechless. Was it some doppelganger or another fox who had the very same styled fur as her? It couldn't be another fox. Even in Kitsune Village, among the 200 other foxes, Akane's coloring positions had always been unique. So that must mean somehow Akane, who had not joined him for the expedition, was here right now. Wait, Maybe it's an illusion. He rubbed his eyes. Nope, she was still sitting there, her eyes so full of mischievous joy. Forest Fox, Foundation level 60. It's her. How in the nine she did find me. More importantly, how did she get here? Kai tentatively reached his hand out. He was still half convinced she was an illusion he was suffering from. Maybe even mind magic. Running his hand down her head and back, Kai felt the familiar sensation of fur worth its weight in platinum. He quickly picked up the fox and hugged her to his chest plate. Akane, I have so many questions. But they are going to have to wait. Thank you for finding me and helping. But we need to leave. She gave him one of her signature yaps in response. Placing her back on the ground, Kai limped over to the body and kneeled. He felt grief as he recognized the body. It was Hector, or rather it looked like Hector. It was difficult to discern at first. The corpse had all the physical characteristics of Hector, the same hair, eye color, and tattoos. But underneath the battered, half-eaten, bloody body, it was not the corpse of the young 16-year-old Kai had grown to know. Instead, it was the corpse of an old man that looked like Hector. The face and remaining hand were wrinkled, with liver spots scattered across the face and body. The body reminded Kai of Mr. Davenport, his history teacher, the man on the cusp of dying from old age. Somehow in the half-day that had passed, Hector had somehow aged 80 years and died. It was unfathomable. Kai suspected powerful time magic might be able to do such a thing, but someone powerful enough to turn Hector into a husk of a man he once was would have just killed him outright. Upon closer inspection, he noticed torn holes in the robe, with even more wounds underneath. It looked like some of the test dummies at the academy when a spear had punctured their chests. The flimsy robe fabric had not stopped whatever he had fought. Placing his hand over his friend's face, he closed Hector's eyes, hoping to give the man peace in death. A thought occurred to him. Was this how I looked when I died? Did I appear so pitiful and mutilated? Kai wondered what Lucien and the others had done with his corpse after he died. Had he been buried? No, it was more likely his corpse had been burned to a crisp or strung up at the gate of the destroyed city of New Hope as an example. I'm sorry, Hector. I can't bury or destroy your body, nor do I have time, Kai said softly. He knew once he left, more scavenger animals or beasts would find the body and finish the job the rats had started. Akane had waited quietly by the side, giving him the time to examine his friend. Let's get out of this forest, Akane, he said. Pushing off the ground, Kai stumbled. His injured leg gave way, causing him to fall on top of Hector. He tried to stand again, but his leg wouldn't support his weight. Alarmed, he looked down at his leg. Through the small hole in his thigh, where the rat had chewed through his black underclothes, the flesh had turned black. He had expected to see blood and a small depression in the meat of his thigh, but instead, the wound was bloodless, and it reeked of death.